All right, everyone, welcome to the real estate experience with myself, Sterling White. I'm super ecstatic today. I had a little bit of caffeine this morning, so caffeine already of my positiveness just out of whack. Not out of whack necessarily, but I'm already giddy. So putting caffeine on top of that is really pushing it and putting it to the extreme. But we're going to go ahead and drop into the content. I'm going to deliver some bombs for you. Yes, of course, but let's go ahead and roll, where I'll be ultimately through these episodes, experience sharing of my journey as an entrepreneur in the industry. And if you happen to have any questions, do not hesitate, for those of you on YouTube, to comment below, subscribe also as well. And those of you who are listening on iTunes, it would mean the world to me if you left that 5-star review. So had to do that quick plug. And then also those of you who are looking to take your business either to the next level or transition from single family to multifamily, or looking for ways to bring investors to fund your deals or structure deals, as well as I did recently roll out a program to where you would be able to work directly with me. So go ahead and shoot an email to sterling@sterlingwhiteofficial.com. One more time, that is sterling@sterlingwhiteofficial.com. So today is going to be the subject of what key items to look for when you're performing due diligence on your multifamily properties or on multifamily properties. And those of you, I am giving away a free due diligence checklist as well. So with that is, you'll just simply email faye@sterlingwhiteofficial.com in order to get a copy of that. That is FAE@sterlingwhiteofficial.com. One more time, faye@sterlingwhiteofficial.com, and you'll get a free copy of the checklist of the items to essentially check off as you're completing the due diligence on an apartment. And also, there's, depending on the size of the apartment too, there will be more items in there. There's tons of moving parts and a lot of things you have to get through in order to ensure that it's a worthwhile investment. And one thing that I've learned, and this quote, I forgot who exactly said it, love this thought, is when you're doing the due diligence, and I'll probably say that word 1,000 times throughout this episode, is when you're performing that and doing your necessary research, is you're looking for reasons why not to buy the deal versus reasons to buy the deal. I'm always looking for a reason to kill the deal, to where it would not be a good fit. So those are all the items. And I wonder, please, those of you, I want the person who gets the exact count on the number of times I say due diligence. I would love to hear that, because I'll say it quite a bit. So bear with me. And just some more updates on the 156 unit that I ended up closing on. This was several weeks ago, that I've been talking through since the beginning of this podcast, where it all started with a cold call direct to the owner. This was about a year and a half ago, where the initial contact didn't really have much success getting in touch with them, and it took multiple follow-ups getting in contact. And there was also other brokers too that reached out to me and said, congrats on that. How did you end up getting the deal? And so, yeah, that's ultimately is just doing what others won't do. So just was steadily following up on that, and ended up getting close to, I would say, $1 million discount on that specific asset by avoiding, because if it would have got listed with a broker and on the market, it would have got highest and best, and was able to get a really good price, really great price on it. So there's that. So now getting through the renovations on it, and it's close to $2 million, and right now have completed just about, I would say, about 50 to 60% of the roofs, because all the roofs need to be replaced. Other renovations that need to be completed is the parking lot needs to be seal coated, restriped, and patched as well to make that really sharp. The apartment name was Rockwood Apartments. It is now Remington on Rockville. So rebranded it because it had a little bit of a bad stigma. So these were all and at some point I'll go into a deeper dive on this, but those were some of the elements initially that were completed. And then there's going to be interior renovations on the specific asset, which will include installation of vinyl plank flooring throughout to make it really look nice and sharp, resurfacing the countertops and also the cabinetry, upgrading the appliances, and implementing a two-tone paint scheme, gray on the base and then also white on the trim. We'll have to confirm. Normally that's the go-to. And then push up the rents close to about $116 across all 156 units. And initially on this very deal, this was months ago where I made the mistake that ended up almost costing the deal. But one thing I've learned is not one thing can kill a deal. There's always a multiple of things. So ended up being aggressive. So the owner accepted the verbal offer, and that was after I did the initial underwriting, which I do not enjoy the underwriting, but just wanted to get up there and really get an offer to the owner that I felt was confident. But ended up, once they accepted that offer, that our chief operating officer came in that has more extensive experience and was able to pull the comps and said, that was a little bit too aggressive by about $75 per unit. You think of that per unit, over 156 units times 12, so 12 months. So ended up going back to the seller and asking for a concession of $1 million based upon where we originally, I believe it was closer to about $7 million was the original offer. And then after that we ended up meeting in between. And the numbers ended up still working because the interest rates are so low at this point in time. So that's enough about that. If you happen to have any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me or either slide into the DM if you're on biggerpockets.com, or you can see me on Instagram or Facebook as well. I'm on all the social platforms. But today we'll just be going over the due diligence items. So the first one is financials. As simple as it sounds, this is very important so you can understand what you'll want is the rent roll, which is simply a ledger that showcases all the residents that are there, which units are occupied, and some rent rolls are different from others, but this is the standard that you see that's in it, which is the units that are vacant, which ones are occupied, the tenants' names, the duration of the lease, the security deposit, the rent. So it'll have all of that in the rent roll. And then also the T12, which a T12 is a technical term meaning trailing 12, which is trailing 12 financials. So let's say it's we're in December of 2019, then you'll want to get the financials from December 2019 to December 2008, and that shows you the history of how the property has been performing. So let's say the owner has been operating it at, let's say, 15 or 20% expense ratio, then automatically you'll know that's a red flag that there is a high probability that some things are missing. Because normally that property should be operating, if it's a C-class asset, let's say, or even a B, that between about 50 to about 55% expense ratio. So that's automatically that you can dig deeper and determine that, okay, once I take over this asset, this is actually how it's going to be ran. So that's what the financials will be able to give you a more clear picture. And this is something that you want well before you actually do let's say go under contract. Some owners may be a little bit not so reluctant in giving those financials, but you'll just have to explain, here, I just want to make the best use of your time. Rather not go under contract, receive the financials, and then end up having to blow out because I don't understand what's actually going on with the property. So you just have to, this is all the whole sales element. But if they're motivated, they want to sell, they'll give you the financials. You'll need those, unless it's just a complete mom and pop and everything's on a pen and everything's on paper. Okay, secondly, market analysis. And this is if you're not familiar with the market or you're venturing somewhere else. Myself, when I went to Louisville, Kentucky, was looking at other Midwestern markets that were, so here, headquartered in Indianapolis is where I have majority of my holdings, but looking at other markets because Indianapolis was getting super tight and have to build that large enough pipeline to where that I'm not so heavily reliant on this market. So what I love to say is the more contacts equals the more contacts equals contracts. That's what it comes down to. So put an additional market, and it came down to Louisville, Kentucky at the end of the day, because really like the diverse diversity in terms of the businesses that are headquartered in the city. There's population growth. Nothing too crazy because you're in the Midwest. There's not huge swings unless you're in Columbus. Ohio is on fire in terms of the population growth. And then also it's very landlord friendly. There's other mechanisms in there too. There's job growth as well. Jobs aren't leaving Louisville. They're actually coming in. But those are the main elements among some others. And all these statistics you can get from just doing a standard Google search. There's specific directories that do all of these stats. And then also visit those markets too to really, and this is getting really dialed in. So once you determine what your market is, let's say Louisville, Kentucky, then you further get into the trenches, if so, and do a by neighborhood to determine where you're actually going to invest in. So myself is I'll map out and cross out all of the red zones, what I call them, the war zones, where it's a lot more high crime, high tenant turnover. They tend to not stay in the residence or the homes that long. So those are the ones that I'll carve out and only focus on the working class and really shift away from the really affluent. Just blue collar neighborhoods, working class, bread and butter. I'll determine what those neighborhoods are and then go actually visit them. For Louisville, Kentucky, I actually grabbed a couple of Airbnb, stayed in the market, stayed in those neighborhoods, and really got a good sense of the type of demographic that I would be renting to. And that was just me just going all in on that. And I was also meeting with property managers too, because ended up third partying at the beginning of having that 80 unit that was in Louisville, Kentucky. And that was acquired October of 2018, but it ended up not working out and ended up bringing the property management in-house. And this is why it's beneficial to have those economies of scale, because this is an 80 unit, so able to have a on-site manager and also maintenance, so we can run operations from Indianapolis. Still, we have our construction manager drives down there, and also our COO drives down there too, just to ensure everything is running smoothly. Versus having a 16 unit, it'd be a lot more difficult to do that and really run things much more efficiently. So the next one is competitor analysis. And by competitor analysis is just pulling, let's say, comparables, meaning that if you're going to push your rents up $100 or let's say $115 rent price per square foot on the rent, that's usually what I like to gauge when pulling the comps. And through that is, let's say you're wanting to push up to $1.15 and your competitor that is at $1.15 too, but they've got stainless steel appliances, they've got a pool, they've got a playground, a lot more amenities than what you are able to provide, then you may want to take a second thought on if you're going to be able to push your rent up that high, because the residents or the prospective residents will just end up going to the other community versus yours because you don't have all of the amenities. You may want to actually push yours to about $1.05. So that's one thing. And you can get comps from, there's Rental Meter, which is free. There's upgrades too, but there's a couple free searches that you can do. You can use Zillow.com. There is CoStar is another source that you can leverage too, but you're just looking for communities that are similar type of style. So built in, let's say you have an older apartment that's built in 1970, you want to look for something that's comparable, not a 2018 or 2019 completely newly constructed product, then that's not really a comparable comp. So those are the types of things that you want to look for. So the next one is the phase one. And one thing that I want to mention is if you have not already grabbed a copy, you are missing out. 0 from 400 units. It is free. Go ahead and grab it. Visit Sterling at it is sterlingwhiteofficial.com. That is sterlingwhiteofficial.com. Woo. Excuse me, I had a burp a little bit. Editor, keep that in. So the next one is phase one, and this is generally just a requirement for the lender just to ensure there's no outstanding contaminants or anything that is underneath the property or that could affect the water that the residents use. Normally, this is more of a concern if there is a gas station that's nearby. So there's nothing too much your lender would require that. And one thing is, when you're doing these, especially when it comes to the unit inspections, which I'll get to that, and then the contractor quotes, which is the next, is you want to have a inspector. Always have a inspector inspect the property, because they'll tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when one trick that I always love to use is, when the inspection is completed, I'll give the inspector a call and tell me what are the red flags with this property. What is something that is a complete, very iffy? And if it's one of those things that was not foreseen whatsoever, then that's a possibility to go back to the seller and renegotiate if it's that large of a concern. I have not ran into that. Have ran into that previously with one deal, which was 118 units that with the roofs, but I'll actually mention that at a later point. But yeah, that's one trick I always use, is going to the inspector and asking them what are the absolute red flags that you uncovered during your inspection. Because remember, all the time during the due diligence, and for those of you who are accounting, I wonder where I'm at on that. You want to figure out ways why you should not buy the deal versus why you should buy the deal. Because I know in these, you can get so invested that you just try and overlook things and really want to push to acquire that deal. But it's much worse when you buy the deal to, let's say you end up blowing out your budget and you're not able to give your partners your returns. You're be in a better position to walk away from the deal than to actually close on it. Then you get underwater, you have unsatisfied investors, and then they won't end up investing with you, and there's a whole trickle-down effect from that. The next one is contractor quotes. This was from personal experience, during this process, is all the questionable items. And if you can have a contractor walk through the unit inspections, or when you're touring the property, that's that much better. So there, episode 7, I detail this more on the 118 unit that I went under contract on, end up blowing out of it because the roofs. But when the seller during the original conversations mentioned they had been patching the roofs for, and now hindsight 2020, shouldn't have took that as a red flag, but didn't, that they conveyed that they had been patching the roofs for their duration of since they've owned it, which was just over 15 years or just under 20 years, somewhere between that window, that they had been patching them right then and there before paying all those costs to the lender to have their engineer come out and have all their reports done. Should have got a roof contractor up there to get a quote on those roofs, because in the assumptions and the underwriting, ended up assuming that we would, both my partner and I, would be able to patch those roofs too. I know it sounds completely dumb and absurd, but that was the thinking, and I accept full responsibility on that. And it was determined that this was, which goes into my next item, when all the walkthroughs were done on the individual unit basis, all the units on the top floor, I would say about 90% of them had a leak that was going through the ceiling. So that was roofs. Ended up getting the roofer up there to place a bid, and they said that all these roofs need to be replaced within the next 2 years. Ended up going to the seller and saying, hey, we're not going to be able to move forward at this price. And they said, okay, what do you want me to do about it? As simple as that. And just ended up getting a mutual release from the contract, and had about $20,000 invested into that. But I feel that would have lost a lot more if ended up pursuing that deal, and ended up still trying to construe the numbers and say, maybe we can push up the rents a little bit more than this. That's a big no-no. And luckily had the self-awareness to say, okay, let's just step away from this. It's not going to work. And was able to take those lessons on the next deal, which was an 80 unit here in Indianapolis, not the one in Louisville, Kentucky, and ended up getting the roofers up there sooner than later, and had the seller replace those roofs. But that's the thing about learning, and I look at that deal as not a mistake. It was just paying tuition, and was able to apply that on the next deal, and that's all mindset. So this is the next point that I was going to mention. So I'm going to go ahead and go through all of them. First one is obtaining financials, the T12 as well as the rent roll. Second is a market analysis, understanding the dynamics such as the population growth, that it's a diverse economy or diverse businesses that are there, that they're landlord friendly and also business friendly, because there's some cities such as Chicago, they call it Crook County, not getting into politics or anything, but it's Cook County, where it's a lot more tenant friendly, and that it could take anywhere at minimum 6 months to get a resident out of your property if they are not paying rent and they're more of a sophisticated tenant and they know how to work the system. That would not be fun, because at the same time that they're not paying rent and you have a mortgage on that property, then you're going to have to come out of pocket to pay that mortgage. I would not want to get into that situation. The next one is a competitor analysis, which is pulling comps and seeing what other apartments, multifamily properties offer near yours. If it's smaller than, let's say, a 40 or 50 unit, then a lot of times there are no amenities. Some may still provide it, but those are things that you want to look into. The next is a phase one, which is generally required by the lender. Next is getting contractor quotes. If you can have a contractor walk through with you, the more the better. The next one is walking all of the individual units. So the 118 unit walked all of those units. The 156 unit did not walk all those units. Now have a team involved that does that. I did walk through several, but had our phenomenal construction manager walk through those, take pictures to better understand the scope of work for each individual unit. And bring a snack if it's a larger complex. That's one thing, because it could be all day. All the door knocking, the residents getting ready to open the door. I've seen some interesting things in some units. Stripper pole. Yes, I've seen 2 stripper poles in 2 units. So hilarious. Just a little segue there. I would love to hear anyone comment below and let me know what's the most interesting thing that you have seen when you have walked into a unit. Stripper pole was so interesting and hilarious. The next one is getting service contracts. Service contracts is just laundry contracts, landscaping, let's say pest control, because majority of the time those contracts you will inherit, especially when it comes to the the laundry. So as simple as that. And then attaining all of the leases. Hopefully you can get a property manager involved, or your property management company, to help with attaining all the leases and just simply going through and auditing them to make sure that there's nothing weird on the back end that on the lease that the tenant doesn't on their last 3 months. So just to ensure that there's nothing weird or funky that's going on that maybe the previous owner provided as a concession just to get them into the property because they knew they were going to sell it, such as free last 3 months of your rent. There's some interesting things out there. I haven't ran into anything, but I've ran into some very fraudulent cases. So there's that. And now just finishing things. And one thing I want to allude to is if you want to personally work with me, go ahead and visit sterlingwhiteofficial.com. That is sterlingwhiteofficial.com. Visit the contact page. I have recently rolled out a program where you would be able to work directly with myself, where we'll really go into the ins and outs of whether you're looking to transition from single family to multifamily, or just some overall mindset shifts as well, and ways to scale your business, because I have just under 600 units. And in addition to that, how you put together a multifamily syndication, how you put together deals, all those things we can go over. But today we're going to end with a quote, which the quote is, "Great things never came from comfort zones." Let that sink in. Letting it sink in? Quiet pause. All right. What I get away from this is exactly what it means. That anything that you want to do is, let's say you're working a full-time job, for instance, and you want to go into real estate full-time, but you're just not unsure whether it's going to work or whether you want to take that leap of faith. And it's just outside your comfort zone to do that all the things that you really want are just outside of that. Whether it's picking up the phone to call an owner of a property that you see that's distressed and that's out of your comfort zone, then you just have to make the call and figure it out. And if you're not able to do it, you may have to build the courage to ask someone else to get in there. But there's just a multitude of things. Myself I am petrified of heights. But the weirdest thing is I am still a thrill seeker. I have cliff dived off a 65-foot cliff, and what else have I done? I've bungee jumped. But the most funniest thing is my good friend, and this was his bachelorette party. I know, I just like to call it a bachelorette party. But we were, the whole time, there's like multiple heights. There's like a really bottom height that's like 25 feet that you can jump off. Not as scary. There's another one that's like 45 that gets a little bit of rocky. And then there's a high one. So there was a group of about 15 of us. All 15 did the bottom one. Half did the 45 one. So the whole time leading up to this trip, I was talking a big game. I was saying I'm going to go right up there, skip everything else, and go right for the top dog. And when it came down to it, I actually chickened out, to be honest. But the whole time I was sitting on that rock, and I was thinking in the back of my head that, one, I'm going to regret this, that I did not do it, because this is out of my comfort zone. I'm petrified of heights. And it was very sketchy up there because you had to climb. And if you ended up making one false move, you had to push yourself because there was a ton of rocks that were underneath you. And then secondly, I knew my friend was going to just give me a whole bunch of crap for it. So they ended up, there was only 2 people out of the total 15. I ended up going up there and jumping off the top one. And I just knew that, I felt the regret. And there was that move. I said, Sterling, let's do it. I had that self-talk I always have with myself. And I went up there and I did it. And there was a photographer there. And right I was about to jump, he's like, whoa, wait, let me take a picture. I was like, no. And I just jumped. But yeah, that was a phenomenal experience. I really felt in the moment. But that was just right outside my comfort zone. And when doing things like that to stretch myself, that just helps me build that much more confidence to do things such as drop in an owner's office right after they've hung up the phone with me and say, yes, I completely understand. You have a ton of things going on. I know you hung up on me yesterday, but I did just want to touch base with you. Just drop in cold, just little things like that you essentially just get from building that confidence. So one thing I want to mention to all of you, I've said it several times, I truly appreciate your time. And if there's any way I can be of additional value, don't ever hesitate to reach out, because at the end of the day, I love this quote by Tony Robbins that says, "The secret to living is giving." Have a great one. Thank you. Thanks for listening to The Real Estate Experience. If this has brought you any value, please subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to me. Now go out there and crush it.